Hello everyone, I am Yayati Gupta, a research scholar in the field of social network analysis, and in this lecture we are going to study a very important and as well as a very interesting concept in social network analysis, which we call small world phenomenon. As we see, the term small world phenomenon is quite self-explanatory by its name. So let's look for the agenda for this lecture. First of all, we'll discuss what is small world phenomenon, what does it actually mean. Next, we'll look at a very interesting experiment performed by the social psychologist Stanley Milgram and some of the very striking discoveries he has come up with. Next, we'll look at how can we model the real world as well as the searching on the real world with respect to the Milgram's experiment. Next, we'll talk about the notions of social foci and social distance, and finally we'll close down with certain critiques of the Milgram experiment, certain drawbacks and conditions where his experiment didn't hold. The first question that we try to answer is our world small? What do you think? Is our world small? Are all of us very close to each other? Actually, it does not seem to be so. Am I really close to Obama? Am I really close to Shah Rukh Khan? Am I really close to someone who is living in some very impoverished village, a very remote village in South Africa? And to your surprise, the answer is yes. We'll see the logic and reason for why this answer is yes. Before starting with here, I would like to tell you a story which may sound very familiar to you in your own cases, and you would have also gone with several circumstances of that type. So it was when I have just joined my BTech. I just started going colleges in my initial days, and we had a receptionist there. She was a lady which around 50-year-old, and during my free time I used to sit with her, do some gossips and chit chat. We talked a lot and I enjoyed her company. Both of us enjoyed each other's company. One day randomly while talking with her, I discovered that her elder son has passed out from a school, DAV public school. After listening to this, I was reminded of my brother also passing out from the same school. So I brought in that topic into our discussion and I told her that my brother also studied in the same school. Then she told me some things about her son. I told her some things about my brother, and we soon realized that her son and my brother were the best friends. So it really came to me as a surprise. So me and this lady now, which we were quite close to each other. Actually, we were at a distance of 3 with each other, and now we were at a distance of 2. I could recall my brother talking about this friend, why his friend was jealous of why my brother's friend was jealous of my brother, because the lady, the receptionist, she used to prepare nice dishes for my brother when he used to go their home. Otherwise my brother's friend would get nothing and he had to go to his school with sandwiches. I was reminded of all such stories and I was really like, is the world really small? And I feel that many of you would recall such experiences happening with you. And in case you still have a doubt, you can go to this YouTube link on buzzfeed.com and watch certain encounters that prove that the world is smaller than what do you actually think. And even then, if you don't agree, then the rest of this lecture will really help you out in believing this. So let's move on. Let's now talk about it from a scientific point of view. Was there some experiment conducted to prove this, that all of us are really very close to each other? And the answer was provided by the social psychologist Stanley Milgram, who has conducted a very well-known experiment, the small world experiment it is called as. The experiment was very simple and very straightforward. So this scientist Stanley Milgram, he has chosen some people from different parts of the world, which consisted of some people from very remote villages of South Africa, some people from cities, and from different parts of the world and different kind of people. All of them were given a letter, and this letter was needed to be addressed to a person living in Boston. So this was a random person living in Boston, and what all of them had to do as a part of game was they had to make this letter reach to that target person, and while doing this they had to follow certain rules of the game. So first of all, on the envelope there were some details about this target person, like his name, his occupation, and some of his personal details. And the rule of the game was you can't directly post this letter to this target person. What you can do is you can forward this letter to one of your friend whom you know on a first name basis. What do we mean by a first name basis is that friends should be so close to each other that you call him by his first name and nothing else. That friend should be very close to you. So you can pass this letter to one of your friend, ask him to pass this to one of his friend, and continuously in this way this letter should be able to reach the target person. And Milgram wanted to see what is the average length of this path with which this letter will have to travel. So can we have some guesses for what this number will be? What will be the length of this path? To our surprise, the length of this path came out to be 6. Just 6. It means that I am connected to every person on this earth and any person on this earth in a maximum of 6 hops. So if I want to reach Obama or I want to reach Shah Rukh Khan, it's like I'll know someone who will 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 finally know Shah Rukh Khan. So this very thing seems to be quite unbelievable. How can I be so close to these people whom I feel are very far away from me and whom I think I can't approach in my whole life? Let's try to build in some logic for these statements and see how do they really hold. Before doing that, let's look at two striking facts which were given or which were discovered by the Milgram experiment. So first is the existence of short paths. Existence of short paths which very clearly means that all of us are connected with the help of short paths, which in itself seems quite unbelievable. And the second thing is people's ability to find these short paths. So it's like it means that if according to the Milgram experiment, if it is true, I am given a letter and I am asked to address this letter to Shah Rukh Khan only through following my friends and so on, I can do it in a maximum of 6 hops. I can do it. This is what the experiment says. So it means actually I know nothing about the whole network. I just know about my friends or at the maximum their friends. So nothing except this 2 level I know about the network. I do not have a complete map of the whole network. Even in the absence of this map, I am able to trace my way to Shah Rukh Khan or I am able to trace my path up to him. So the second striking fact is people's ability to find these short paths. So one by one we'll look at both of these factors. Starting with the first one, which is the existence of short paths. Let's look at a very simple logic which will convince you that short paths exist in our network. So here are you in the network. What do you think on an average how many friends you'll have? So let's take this number down and let's say you have around 100 friends. So you have 100 friends. So you have immediate 100 people on this earth whom you know. Let's go one level down. As you move one level down, you see each of these 100 friends will have some more 100 friends. So if you just go 2 level down, you know 10,000 people. So if you go one level down, you know 10 people. If you go one level more down, you know 10 to the power 2 people. If you go one more level down, you know 10 to the power 3 people. So you see how this number is increasing exponentially. And that is quite the reason how do short paths exist in our network. So this gives you an intuition of how short paths exist and how my distance with everyone is very small. Now this is a very vague and a very simple way of modeling our world. Let us try to take it to some nice level and to some good level. So the first very problem with this is our world cannot be modeled in this tree-like way. It is just showing that I know someone who knows someone Now this person can know me back, right? Because there are triads in our network. I may know someone who may know someone who can know me in back. So it needs to be modeled something like this. So you can see I know someone who knows someone. Now this person can all now these two, now if I know this person, I know this person, both of these person may also know each other. So this is a better model as compared to the previous one, but still not a very logical and a very scientific way of modeling our world. Before going on to the next level, which was proposed by Watson Strogatz, let's notice that before the model that we are going to discuss next, the only model that described our world was a random model, which told that friendships are totally random. After that, this discovery made by Milgram came, and the next model for modeling our world was given by Watson Strogatz, which is a very interesting model. So the model says that you can assume every person in this world lying on a two-dimensional grid. So you can see in this figure there is a two-dimensional grid, and all of us are some nodes on this two-dimensional grid. I have used this these slides for one of the departmental presentations, and I like this slide very much for explaining the Watson-Strogatz model. So I have put it here. So you can see here are the research scholars of computer science department, and there are direct links between all of us because all of us are directly connected with each other. So according to this model, every node has some contacts with the people closest to it. So you can see every node is connected to one node on its left, right, top and bottom, as well as diagonally opposite. What makes our world small is that some of the people in us have some long range contacts which build out of something, which could be because of various factors. So as you can see in this particular example, here this person, Dr. Jakpreet, who is now Dr. Jakpreet, once in our department, he has made some long range contacts. So what happens, although my distance with this node here, which is on the top, is very high, but if I take this path through Dr. Jakpreet, it becomes very less. So it is because of such people and their long range contacts that reduces all of our distance to different people. So it's like I feel like I may not know Shah Rukh Khan, but maybe some of my friend knows him, or even not some of my friend. Maybe my friend has a father who is a journalist, and he will know Shah Rukh Khan. So something sort of that. So while modeling it, we go in this way that all of us are connected with the people who are closest to us with one link, with one edge, and there are some people with us who make some long range contacts, which brings all of us closer to these nodes which are in some other part of the world. So this is essentially the whole of the crux behind Watson-Strogatz model. So Watson-Strogatz model, it properly gives you a reason for the existence of short paths in a network. Now the next thing that we had to focus on is, okay, so we have seen here the first thing, that is the existence of short paths, which is accounted by the Watson-Strogatz model. Next we have to try to look at how do we model the people's ability to find these short paths, and how do I give a logic to this statement, or it's actually not a statement, to this observed factor. Okay, so let us try to see how just the human brain works. Suppose I give you a letter and I want you to target it to I want you to target it to Barabasi, who is the topmost network theory scientist. I want you to make this letter reach Barabasi. How are you going to go about it? You can't simply give this letter to each of your friends and ask them to give their letter to each of their friends and so on to reach Barabasi. It seems like a totally unpractical approach. So what you may do is, First of all, if you can directly reach Dr. Sudarshan, you will approach him, because you know that Barabasi is a network scientist and Dr. Sudarshan too is. So you may try to reach Barabasi through him. Or if you can't access Dr. Sudarshan, you will try to access some of his students, because you know that we can access him, and through us your latter can reach Barabasi. Or if you know some other scientist in the same area or in the same institution where Barabasi is, you will try to go through there. So you see here, you are following a strategy. You are not following some random links, or you are not following an all breadth-first search kind of approach, which will lead to the flooding of networks. Milgram too observed the same factor, that people, they follow a very well-defined path when they forward such a ladder. So you see in this figure, this is the starting position from where the ladder starts, and then you see it reaches to this location. After this it reaches to this location, and so on till it reaches the target. And you can also see that these distances which the ladder is traversing are not linear. The ladder is somehow traversing in an exponential manner, and it is getting quite closer and closer to its target in every step. We'll model this whole behavior in the advanced topics that we are going to cover in the next lecture. We'll see how this actually happens. So now we try to see it in a less complicated way. Okay. So we try to see, can we use this model given by Barabasi and Albert for decentralized search? Actually, it's quite difficult, because according to the model given by, I meant to say Watts and Strogat's model. Can we use Watts and Strogat's model for this decentralized search? For how do the people, they find their path on a network? The problem with this model is that all the edges, all these long range edges that are laid down in this network are very, very random according to Watts-Strogat's model. These edges are very random, so you do not know in the network where these edges are located. So if I am here and I want to reach some of any of these people who are located in some other part of the network, here lies Dr. Jagpreet, who has a direct link to them, but I may not know of that, and these links are too random. They can be with him, they can be with Raghunath, they can be with Shipra, they can be with Supantha, they can be with anyone. So I will totally be really confused. I won't know exactly which path do I follow. So what we need is that these links should also not be random. They should follow some pattern, so that we may have an idea of where to move. So the problem with Watts-Strogat's model is weak ties should also have a pattern. Weak ties here essentially means your long range contacts. They should have a pattern, and they should not be laid down randomly. Next, what we try to do is we generalize this model given by Barabasi and Albert, and then see how can it help us. Before generalizing the model, let us try to understand the model from a very formal point of view. I have given you a very basic intuition of what the model is in the previous slides. Let us try to model it very formally. So in a very formal way, in Watts-Strogat's model, all the nodes, they are laid down on a two-dimensional grid. Every node has some regular edges within R grid steps. What do we mean by here in R grid steps is, if I have one step, in one step lies one node to me on my right, one node on my left, one on my top, and one on my bottom. So in this case, the value of R is 1. I will make the contacts with all the nodes who are at a distance of 1 from me. If the value of R was 2, I will also, if I am here, I'll also make a contact with this node. I'll make a contact with all the nodes which lie at a distance of 2 from me. So in this particular case, the value of R is 1. So you make some regular edges within your R grid steps, which is quite evident. And then every node makes k random edges. Make sure here it is every node that makes k random edges. So if I am here, I'll make some, here the value of k is 5, so I make some 5 random edges. In this model, Watts and Strogat's, they do not say anything about the length of these random edges. Length can be anything. So I can directly connect to a person which is very far away from the network, as well as to a person which is quite closer to me. That is what do we mean by random edges here, and every person does the same. Now let's look at how can we reduce this randomness and come to a very nice pattern. So we generalize this model. So as previously we have the regular edges within our grid steps that we were having. Now we are having, similar to the previous case, k random edges, but the thing to notice here is the length of these edges decays with the distance. So as you move further and further, you will so it means that you will have less number of long range contacts with the people who are quite far to you. With the people who are closer to you, you have a higher tendency of making a long range contact. So to model it, we use a very simple equation. If I have two nodes V and W in the network, which are not at a distance of 1 from each other, which are at some finite distance from each other, so the probability that there is a random edge or there is a long range tie between these two nodes is proportional to dVW, which is the distance between them, to the power minus q. So it is 1 by dVW to the power of q. So can you tell me what will be the value of q for the very specific Watt-Strogatz model which we have studied before, where every long range contact was made randomly? What will be the value of q there? So if you take the value of q to be 0, so the probability of random edge between V and W will be proportional to 1, which will be a constant value, which means that the probability of two nodes having a long range contact between them does not depend upon the distance. So that is what exactly models the Watt-Strogatz model that we have done before. And let's see what does the value of q signify. So as you increase the value of q, so here the curve, this particular figure, it shows you that the value of q is increasing. The randomness in your network, it decreases. I'm so sorry for this slide, it should be decreases here. I'll just change it. Okay, so here we go about it. Yeah, so as the value of q increases, the randomness of your network will decrease. So in the case when q is 0, you are having the maximum randomness, and as you move forward and make q to be a very large value, your randomness will keep decreasing. It will become less and less random. So now we want to model a real world network. So in this case, our long range ties, they should not be very random, because if they are very random, I won't know which node should I follow, which node should I pass on my letter to, and the randomness should also not be very less. So let us see what will happen if the randomness is very high and if the randomness is very less, which is shown by this figure. So you see in this figure, if the random, so the first figure shows where you have a very small value of q. Q is actually called the clustering exponent. So if you have a very small value of clustering exponent, you can see here that the links are very random, as well as their length is also very high. So you can't say anything here. As you increase the value of q, what will happen? The length of these links will keep becoming small. So you see, if you have a very large clustering exponent, the length of these links have become very small, and it too will not serve our purpose, because in this case the whole of the purpose of long range ties will get defeated. So we need something in between. We need an optimal value of clustering exponent which could very well model our world and give us the pattern that and logic for which the people can follow these paths. So let us try to understand what is the optimal value of q. We are going to do a thorough proof for this optimal value in the advanced material, but here let us look at it at a very intuitive level what is happening. So first of all, I would like to tell you that for a two-dimensional network, for the Watt-Strogatz model, the generalized model that we have studied, the optimal value of q is 2. Let us see how does it operate. So for considering it, let us organize our network in different scales of resolution. What do I mean by scale of resolution is, if I am somewhere here in the network, so these are all the nodes which lie at a distance of 2 from me. this is the distance 2 from me, this is the distance 4 from me, this is the distance 8 from me. Now by scale of resolution I mean, by the first scale I mean that people who lie at a distance of 2 to 4 from me. So this is your one scale of resolution. Another scale of resolution is I look at the people who lie at a distance of 4 to 8 from me. Another scale of resolution will be I look at the people who lie at a distance of 8 to 16 from me. So you see how it is varying. So overall, if I talk in a formal sense, I am talking about the nodes who lie at a distance of D to 2D from me, and then I see how many long range contacts I have with these people. So if I want the network to be optimally searchable, what I want is that irrespective of the value of D, I should have the same number of long range contacts with every level of resolution. So if I am here, I should have the same number of long range contacts here as I have with this scale of resolution, as I have with this scale of resolution, so that I can move anywhere in the network freely. So let's see how does this value 2 serves our purpose. So I know this is the distance D from me, this is the distance 2D from me. If I want an estimate of how many nodes lie in this area, it will be something which will be proportional to D square, because it will be the area of this bigger concentric circle minus the area of the smaller concentric circle, which will be 4 pi D square minus pi D square, which is 3 pi D square, which is proportional to D square. Let us see, for making it simple, we just see it as proportional to D square. Okay, so the number of nodes in this area is proportional to D square. Now there are D square nodes in this area, or some, let's say a constant C into D square. C into D square nodes in this area. What is my probability of making a link with a node here? It will be 1 divided by CD square, because if there are CD square nodes here, so if I have one link here, so my probability of making one link here will be proportional to 1 by D square. So if I look at the number of links I have with this area, it will be equal to this value, that is CD square, into this value, which is proportional to 1 by D square. So you can see that both of these D square will cancel out and I will get a constant value. So I have a constant number of links with this area, a constant number of links, and this value, that the constant number of links, obviously it is free of this value D. So I can see whether I talk about the scale of resolution from 2 to 4 or from 4 to 8 or from 8 to 16, I make equal number of long range contacts with every scale of resolution, irrespective of what is the distance or what is the scale of resolution I am talking about. That makes it very easy for me to traverse to the network. So the same probability I am having to move to this scale of resolution, with the same probability I can move to a higher scale of resolution, and so on. This proof may not be very clear to you. It will become more clear when we'll discuss it in the advanced material. Okay. So till now we have talked about this value of Q, which was your threshold, or your we have okay. So till now we have talked about this value of Q to be 2 through some experiments and through some logics and maths. But the next question is, does this value actually hold in the real world? If I take a real world network and I want to find out this value of Q, how should I go about it? It is a little bit difficult to model it in the real world, but a small intuition has been given in the section 20.5 in the book, which is quite easy to understand. So I would like you to go to it by yourself. So for it you can refer section 20.5 in the book, and you need to see the first two sections or first two subsections in this particular section. The next subsections we are going to talk about. Next, let's try to look at social foci and social distance. So why do we need these terms, social foci and social distance? We are from the starting of this lecture itself, we are trying to model our real world, and whenever we try to model our real world, we lay down some nodes, and then we lay down some edges from these nodes. So on what basis are these edges formed? So like as you have seen in this particular example here these edges are formed on the basis of similarity. All of us have an edge to each other because all of us are research scholars, or you can say we have the same occupation. We are similar in some way, so we have some edge. I may be similar to my mother or father because we belong to the same family, and again I can have an edge between them. So here all these edges are based upon the notion of similarity. And if you have gone through this section, I prefer that you go through this section before continuing with rest of the clip. Okay, so if you have gone through this section, you will also understand that in this particular case we were trying to make these edges in terms of, we are trying to lay down these edges in terms of geographical proximity. So if I am closer to you in terms of the geographical location, we will have an edge, and our social distance will be less. So how do we actually measure this social distance? If I want to calculate my social distance from a person, how do I go about it? Whole of our model is based on the terms of social distance. If we are finding out the value of q, that is the coefficient, or we are trying to model it in some other way, everywhere we are talking about the distance between the two nodes v and w, and then we are going to model the rest of the things. So social foci and social distance is a yet another way of how to find out this distance. So let us try to understand it this way. It is also a definition of similarity. I may know you, or we have an edge with each other because both of us we reside in the same block, or because both of us may go to the same cafe, or both of us may have attended a concert together, or both of us may be the persons of the same company. So all these kind of things, they tend to bring all of us closer to each other. So we refer each of these things as a social foci, as a social focus. So block is a social focus, cafe is a social focus, concert is a social focus, company is a different social focus. So all of these are social focus of which are we part of. And again we can be a part of different social foci also, as in you can be on the same block with me, as well as you can come to the same cafe as me. In that case both of us are a part of two different social foci. So let us see how do we measure social distance with the help of social foci. It is very simple. So suppose I live in the same city as you. A city is also a social focus. So this city may comprise of say 10,000 people. So both of us are living in a city of 10,000 people. That is a social focus which is trying to bring us together. But I may go with you in a church in which there are 30 members. So we may know each other because of that church. So being a member of this church has a higher probability because of which we know each other. We may not know each other because we are a part of a city having 10,000 people. We are more prone to know each other because of the church of which we are a part of. So modeling this, so bringing this intuition to a rigor, we can say that the social distance between two people is equal to the size of the smallest focus that includes both of them. So if I want to know my social distance with you, I should look at all these social foci of which both of us are a part of, and I then choose the one which is the smallest among them, and that is our social distance with each other. So you can see that in this figure. So if I talk about the node U and V, so U and V are a part of this social focus which comprises of just two people. They are also a part of this social focus which has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which have 7 people, and then they are a part of this biggest social focus also, but they are more likely to know each other because they are a part of this circle which comprises of just 2 people. So you can see that in this case the social distance between V and U is 2. Similarly, the social distance between V and W will be 5. I guess it should be 5. Okay. Similarly, you can go on and see the and try to find out the social distance between each of these nodes which are depicted in this figure. So that is one of the notion of how we can define a social distance. So leaving some of our technical discussions here, let's try to look at some of the critics of Milgram experiment and how did Milgram experiment it failed in some cases. So there was a scientist Judith Kleinberg, if I don't remember her name exactly. So she gave this critic of the Milgram experiment, and the critic was they have tried to actually reproduce the Milgram experiment. After the Milgram experiment was performed and some results were given, many scientists they have tried to reproduce the same experiment. Some has tried to do it exactly the way Milgram has done. Some have tried to do it using the network of emails that you have to forward an email instead of sending a letter by post or handling it over to your friend. And in all the cases, it have been noticed that the success rate of the experiment has been much lower than what was there in Milgram experiment. So was there something fishy in the Milgram experiment, or were there some particular cases involved that gave it a higher success rate? So one of the reasons that comes in our mind can be why the success rate of the future experiments were small could be some of the people like lack of participation. Some of the people would not be interested in the experiment and they could have simply thrown away the letters they have got. But actually it may not be so, because if that was the case, so it can always be accounted in the experimental result. You can always assume that if you are giving 100 people the letter, so maybe 80 out of them will follow your experiment and 20 will throw away the letter, and then you can include all these details in your experimental results to see what is actually happening. So it can be accounted for in the analysis. So this does not seem to be the actual reason. Actual reason comes to be somewhere here, which is like a more fundamental problem. In the experiment that was conducted by Milgram, the target people that were chosen, they were high status people which were well known. They were mostly the university professors or the journalists, which were quite easily reachable. So that may be a case why the Milgram experiment it gave you a high success rate. If you take the target people to be an impoverished person or a low status person, then you may actually not get the same success rate. And this critique of Milgram experiment, it actually gives rise to a very interesting concept in social network analysis, which we call the core periphery structure. And it is a structure which has been recognized very earlier that something of this sort exists, but the formal work on it has on this structure have started only since 2000. So it still lies as a very young concept in social network analysis. Okay, so let us try to understand it. So the core periphery structure, it simply says that, as you can see on the figure on the right, that there are some people in our society who are more affluent, who are high status, and generally most of the population is low status. So these people who are more affluent, they have access to more resources, they have more wealth, they can travel worldwide, they can be a part of various clubs. So this intuition gives rise to this core periphery structure. So all these people who are high status, according to the principle of homophily is again a very simple principle which says that like attracts like. If I am like you, so we tend to be friends. So according to this principle, high status people, they tend to be friends with high status people. So it's like a very common sense thing. And low status people, they tend to be friends with the low status people. But what happened, both of these people, high status and low status people, they do not occupy interchangeable position in the network. So that is, if you see in this network, you can see the core are the group of the high status people. So they are at the center of the network, and rest of the people are periphery, they are low status people. So you can see that these low status people, they are distributed around this core. So you can't interchange the position of this core and periphery. It is a very well defined structure where you can see that if you want to go from one periphery to another periphery node, you'll have to take the help of the core nodes, and then you can move around. And it can also be very easily noticed that it is very easy for any node in this network to reach the core. So if in such a case, if you will pick your target person from this core node, it will be very easy for you to make your letter reach a core. But if you are at this part of your network and you want to make your letter reach here, it could be a bit difficult.